All right, this is video 2 of the EOC review. So there is a video 1 that goes through 1 through 20. I'm going to be doing about 21 through 40. So on 21, we have this inequality and we need to match it with the correct answer in interval notation. So first we need to solve the inequality. We're going to solve this just like we would a regular equation, so I'm trying to isolate x. So I would subtract 8 on both sides, bring down negative 5x is greater than or equal to 23 minus 8, which would give me 15. Then I'll divide both sides by negative 5, so I get x, and then on the right side, positive 15 divided by negative 5 is negative 3. Remember that when we divide by a negative or multiply by a negative on an inequality, the inequality sign flips. So this is going to become less than or equal to. So we have x is less than or equal to negative 3. So if I look at my answer choices, I can automatically cancel out D and A because they have positive 3 and that doesn't match. So now my options are either negative 3 to negative infinity or negative 3 to positive infinity. If x is less than negative 3, that means it's everything less than negative 3, so that means it's going to go to negative infinity. Also notice on here we didn't really have to think about this part, but remember that infinity is always going to have parentheses, or anything that just has less than or greater than. Those get parentheses. If it has less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, that's when we get those brackets around the numbers. On 22, we're just trying to match up this scenario with the correct inequality. So she goes to a pumpkin patch, she's picking out decorations. She picked a pumpkin that costs $18, but would also like to buy some mums that sell for $12 each. So she's buying one pumpkin at $18, multiple mums for $12 each, and she has to spend less than $60. So I first can look at this and just say, okay, anything that's saying she's spending more than $60 doesn't make sense. So A is greater than or equal to. That's saying she would spend more than or equal to $60. That doesn't match. B is saying she's just spending more than $60. So C or D both have the less than. One has less than or equal to, one just has less than. So if she can spend no more than $60, then that means she can spend less than $60, she can spend equal to $60. So that alone tells me my answer has to be C, because D is saying she can only spend less than. But I still want to check and just make sure that this matches everything else to make sure I didn't miss anything. So it has 18, that matches. She's only buying one pumpkin, so there's no variable attached, plus 12x, so plus $12 times however many mums she was buying, so that matches. All right, 23, we have to solve the inequality and then match it with the correct solution. So we have negative 9 is less than or equal to 4x plus 3, less than or equal to 19. I'm going to take the same steps I would for a regular equation here. I just need to do it on both sides. My goal is to get x by itself in the center of that inequality. So first I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. And I'm subtracting it from all 3 sections, the center and the left and right side. So negative 9 minus 3, watch your signs, that would be negative 12, less than or equal to, bring down the 4x, less than or equal to again, 19 minus 3 would give me 16. Now to get x by itself, just like any regular equation, I'm going to divide by 4. Negative 12 divided by 4 would give me negative 3, less than or equal to, x, less than or equal to 16 divided by 4 would give me positive 4. So at this point I would look at my answer choices and see if any of them don't have negative 3 and 4. In this case, I didn't really even need to work it out because all of them have negative 3 and 4, but I wanted to go ahead and work it out here to review that concept in case you did have one where you really did need to work it out on the test. So I can't cancel any out right now because they all have negative 3 and 4. If I look at these graphs, A and B look pretty similar. C and D look very different. So D is like they took an and inequality and an or inequality and they overlapped. Like it's going in one direction, but then it's also shaded between negative 3 and 4. We've never done anything that looked like that. D is definitely not our answer. So Then remember when we did compound inequalities, we had and or inequalities. This is an example of an and. X is between -3 and 4. C is a graph for an or inequality. Remember, or inequalities are going to say or in them. It would be if it said something like -9 is less than or equal to 4x, or 3x is less than or equal to 19. That would be an example of an or inequality. It's going to say or in the middle. And the graph is going to look like C, where it's shaded in either direction. So C is not correct for this one because we are looking at an and. So an and inequality should be shaded between the 2 points. So this should be shaded between -3 and +4. So the only difference is A has the shaded in circles and B does not. Remember, that's coming from your inequality signs. If it was just less than or greater than and it didn't have the or equal to, B would be our answer. But since it has the or equal to, A is the correct answer. This or equal to in the inequality signs means the circles should be shaded in. All right, on 24, we're just trying to match these inequalities with the correct graphs. So again, use your answer choices. First, I would look at this and I would say, okay, I know that this line should be dotted because it doesn't have the or equal to in that inequality symbol. This line should be solid because it does have the or equal to. So I can automatically eliminate answer choices A and D. A has 2 dotted lines, so that doesn't match. D has 2 solid lines, so that doesn't match. Then if I'm looking at B and C, if I know my graphs, I know B has this straight vertical line. And to get a straight vertical line, I would have to have x equals a number. That would be my equation. And that doesn't match what I have as my 2 inequalities that were given to me. Or sorry, that should be x is greater than or equal to 3. But it would just be x and a number. It's not going to be this full inequality like we have that we're given. So that would tell me enough without even thinking about anything else that B doesn't work. So now I'm just going to go through why C does work. So if I look at my first inequality, I have a y-intercept of 1. So if I look at this graph, this one has a y-intercept of 1. My slope is +4/3, so I can go up 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3, and it touches that graph again. So my slope and my y-intercept both match. It's a dotted line based on that inequality symbol that matches up. And it's greater than, so remember that means everything above that line should be shaded, so that matches up. If I look at my second inequality, I have a y-intercept of -2, so that matches. Slope of 1/3, rise 1, run 3, that matches. This one has the or equal to, so it should be a solid line. And it is also greater than, so it should also be shaded above. Remember, on these graphs, they usually only show us where they overlap. And so if you look at that graph where the orange and purple are overlapping, matches where it's shaded on the graph. So C would be our correct answer. But use your answer choices. A lot of times you don't need to go through all of those steps I just talked through if you can just eliminate answer choices that are incorrect. On 25, we're trying to pick which of these is not a solution to the graph. So remember, on an inequality, that's when we're going to have those shaded graphs. If it's in the shaded region, that is a solution. If it's on a solid line, that is a solution. Anything outside of the shaded region is not a solution. So we're just going to check those points. Over 15, up 30, so that's about in here. That's in the shaded region, so that is a solution. Over 20, up 35. That looks like that's right on the line. Since it's on a solid line, that is a solution. Over 10, up 50. That is not in the shaded region, so that would not be a solution. And then over 10, up 10, that's in the shaded region, so that is a solution. This wanted us to find which one was not, so that would be C. Even though when I got to C I knew that that was not, I would still always check your other answers just to make sure you didn't make a mistake. It doesn't take long. Just check your other answers. All right, 26. We have a table that represents age and shoe size, and we're trying to figure out if this would be a function. So remember, the rule for a function is every input should only have one output. Every x should only have one y. So if I see any x values that repeat, then that is probably not a function. I need to check and see what the y values are. So I have this ordered pair 8, 7, and then I have 8, 9. So the input of 8 has two outputs, 7 and 9. Same thing if I look at 10, I have this ordered pair of 10, 9, and I have this ordered pair of 10, 10. So the input of 10 has more than one output, 9 and 10. So this is not a function because 8 goes to 7 and 9, 10 goes to 9 and 10. It doesn't matter when y values repeat. It doesn't matter that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 y values that are 9. That entire y value column could be 9. What matters is if an x value repeats. So it is no because for some x's there are more than one y. Be careful when you're picking answers like that because they could have had another one that said no because for some y's there's more than one x. The rule is if an x value repeats, that is not a function. All right, for 27, we're given the domain. Remember, domain is your x value, so each of these represents an x value. And then we have this equation, and they want us to find the range, which means we're trying to find the y values. So all that means is we need to plug in each of those values. So y equals -2 times 0 plus 3. -2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 equals 3. So I'm going to do the same thing with 2. Y equals -2 times 2 plus 3. So that would be -4 plus 3, which would equal -1. And then last one, y equals -2 times -6 plus 3. -2 times -6 is +12. +12 plus 3 is 15. So I'm looking for one that has 3, -1, and 15. So that would be D. So all I'm doing is matching it up with the correct y values. 28 is very similar, but instead of listing out multiple x values, they just say, given this equation, find f of 1. Remember, if something is in parentheses, that's an x value. If it said like f of x equals -1, this would be a y value. If it's inside the parentheses, that's x. If it's set equal to the number, that's y. So we're given an x value here to plug in and solve for y. So we're going to do the exact same thing I just did above. This complication, or this equation is just a little more complicated, but that's okay. We can do that. So f of -1 equals -3 times -1 squared plus 2 times -1 minus 7. So I took every x out and I put a -1 in. Now we just need to be careful when we're simplifying. Remember that -1 squared is -1 times -1, which would give us +1. If you're plugging that into a calculator, just make sure you're putting the -1 inside parentheses. So -1 squared would give us +1. 2 times -1 would give us -2. And then I'm just going to bring down -7. -3 times 1 would give us -3. I'm going to bring down -2, -7. And now I'm just going to subtract all these. -3 minus 2 would give me -5. -5 minus 7 would give me -12. So my answer is A. All right, on 29, we're looking at sequences. So it asks which one matches the recursive formula. So remember, anytime we're looking at sequences, whether it's arithmetic or geometric, there's two important pieces of information we want. We want the starting value and how much it's changing by. So the starting value in the sequences is called a sub 1, so that's 5. And then the common difference is +5. That's going to be the number at the end. That means it starts at 5 and then it adds 5. So all of these start at 5. That doesn't help me cancel anything out. If I look at A, that's 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15, 15 plus 5 is 20. If I look at B, it looks like it added 10 and then added 20 and then added 40. So that doesn't work. On C, it looks like it added 10 each time. So that doesn't work. And on D, it looks like it added 15 each time. So that doesn't work. So A is my answer. It starts at 5, it adds 5 each time. Again, I would always check all of your answer choices and make sure you didn't pick your answer too quickly. Make sure there's nothing else there that's correct. All right, on 30, they're asking us for the range. This should be the easiest problem you get. If you get this on the EOC, it should be an easy answer you get right. All it's asking you to do is list out the y values from those ordered pairs. So we have 2, 2, 3, 4. Remember that when we list out domain or range, if a number repeats, it's only going to show up once. So we're looking for 2, 3, and 4, so our answer would be A. Okay, on 31, they're asking us what the domain is. Remember, domain is x values left and right. This arrow is going left, this arrow is going right. This arrow is going to keep going left forever and ever until it reaches negative infinity. This arrow is going to keep going right forever and ever until it reaches positive infinity. So my domain would be negative infinity to positive infinity. Remember that C could not be true because that is in brackets, and infinity is never going to have a bracket on it. Okay, on 32, we're given some information, and then they give us an equation, and they want us to find the correct domain. Remember, domain is like your x values. If I look at this equation, I don't have an x value, but I would say h is in the place where x is usually at. So h is going to be like our x value, s is going to be like our y value. So s is the same thing as y, h is the same thing as x. So that means when I'm looking at domain, I want to focus on my h values. So before I even read the problem, answer the question, I know A doesn't make sense. If I'm looking at domain, I'm looking at my X value. So that means in this case, I want to be looking at H. So this problem is talking about how much she earns at her summer job as a lifeguard. She works no more than 25 hours a week. So they give us this equation, S equals 9.5H. So H represents the number of hours she works. So if I look at my options, B says all real numbers. All real numbers means negative infinity is positive infinity, everything in between. So that would mean she could work or she could work negative 15 hours a week, or she could work infinity hours a week. That doesn't make sense. She can't work either of those amounts. So C and D are pretty similar. The only difference is the way the inequality signs are facing. So if I look at C, that is saying the number of hours she works should be more than 0, but less than 25. If I look at D, that's saying 0 should be more than the number of hours she works, or she should be working more than 25 hours. So that doesn't really make sense. This is saying 0 is greater than the number of hours she works. The only way 0 could be greater than that is if she worked a negative number of hours. And then this side is saying the number of hours she works is more than or equal to 25. So she should work more than 25 hours a week. And this problem tells us she can't work any more than 25. So C is our answer. The number of hours she works should be more than 0 and less than 25. All right, 33. It's asking us which one has the greater rate of change. So when we're given an equation, all we need to do is look at the slope. Number attached to x, as long as y is solved for, all we have to do is look at what's attached to x. So that would be 4. On function 2, it gives us 2 ordered pairs, so we need to plug that into the slope formula to get the rate of change. So x1, y1, x2, y2, and then I'm just going to plug that into my slope formula. So 10 minus 6 over 3 minus 1. 10 minus 6 would give me 4. 3 minus 1 would give me 2. So that would simplify to 2. So function 2 has a rate of change of 2. Function 1 has a rate of change of 4. So function 1 is greater. So that tells me it can't be C or D. So if I look at A, it says function 1 because the slope is 5, and that's not true. So that can't be right. B says function 1 because the slope is 4, and the slope of function 2 is 2. That's correct. So my answer is B. On 34, it wants us to get the explicit form pattern. So I need A sub 1, and I need D. A sub 1 is the first term, so that would be 4. D is what it's changing by. Here it's adding 5, so that would be plus 5. So then we need to plug it into the explicit formula. So that is A sub n equals A sub 1 plus B times n minus 1. And now I'm just going to plug in. So A sub n equals 4 plus 5 times n minus 1. And then I'm going to continue simplifying because I can look at these answer choices and see they simplified it further than what I have. So 5 times n, 5 times negative 1. So that would be 5n minus 5. And then I want to combine like terms, 4 and negative 5. Since they're on the same side of the equal sign, I just combine them as they are. 4 minus 5, which would give me negative 1. So I'm going to bring down 5n minus 1. So my answer would be D. On 35, it wants to know how many dots would be in the sixth picture. So I'm not going to draw out 6 pictures because that's doing more work than what I really need to do. I can figure out this pattern and then go from there. So on the first one, it has 2 dots on the top row, or 2 dots on the side. Doesn't matter where you look, there's 2 dots on each side. On 2, there's 3 dots on each side. On 3, there's 4 dots on each side. So if I continue that, on 4, there's going to be 5 dots on each side. In the 5th picture, there's going to be 6 dots on each side. In the 6th picture, there's going to be 7 dots on each side. So if I have 7 dots across the top, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't need to draw all of that out to figure out it's a 7 by 7 square. So 7 by 7, that means there's going to be 49 dots. If you needed to draw out the whole picture to get the answer right, then do that. It probably wouldn't take you that much time if you didn't do it too carefully, and you could get your 49 dots that way. All right, on 36, we're given 2 equations, and we're trying to figure out how the graph would change from one to the other. So we're going from y equals 1/5 x plus 2 to y equals 1/5 x minus 4. So it's going from positive 2 to negative 4. So I would need to know that that's my y-intercept. So one graph is crossing up at positive 2, the next one is crossing down at negative 4. So that means the entire graph is shifting down 6 units. Okay, on 37, we're doing a very similar thing. So it says we would start with y equals 3x plus 2, and then it would change to y equals negative 3x plus 2. So the only difference here is that negative sign on the second equation. So I know that that negative sign is on the slope, so that has nothing to do with the y-intercept. That slope isn't going to shift it left or right. And D says the new line will be parallel. I know for 2 lines to be parallel, they need to have the exact same slope. So that doesn't make sense. One has a slope of 3, one is negative 3. Negative 3 and 3 are not the same. So the only option left is C. And if I think about that, it makes sense. It says it will slope in the opposite direction. If this is a positive 3, I know it's going to be going up from left to right. If this is a negative 3, I know it's going to be going down from left to right. So they would be sloping in opposite directions. That is true. All right, on 38, I want to figure out which data set represents the histogram. So if I look at this histogram, I have one person or whatever this is from 50 to 55. So I know that really includes 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. So I'm going to look at all my options and I'm going to see which one only has one person from 50 to 54. So on A, we have 53, nothing else. On B, 53, nothing else is in that category. C, same thing. D, same thing. So I can't eliminate any from that first category. So I'm going to go down to the last category because that's another short one, from 75 to 80. And I'm looking for one that, again, only has one in that category. So here we have 78. Here we have 76 and 78. So I know that one doesn't work. On C, we have 78. On D, 78 and 76. Okay, so that one doesn't work. There's 2 in the category from 75 to 80, so it can't fit. So now we're down to A versus C. So I'm going to look at the other one that only has 1 in it from 60 to 65. So I know this is really 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. So there's 1 here and 1 here. Looks like that's it. Okay, so that one didn't help me. So now I'll look at one of the larger categories, 55 to 60. So on A, so I'm looking for one that has 4 in it. And I'm going to change colors. So 1, 2, 3. Looks like that's it. Okay, on C, we have 56, 57, 59, and 55. So C has 4 in that category. So C is my right answer. So I'm just going through and trying to match it up. Again, I knew 1 person should be in this category, 1 should be here, 1 should be here, 4 should be here because this bar is going up to 4, 3 should be here, 2 should be here. I did the categories with only 1 in them first because those are easy to check for. They either have 1 or they don't. So it's up to you how you do that, but you're just going through and canceling out options that don't match the histogram. Okay, for 39, it says suppose that for a set of data, the range is X and the inner quartile range is Y. Which statement must be true? So remember, range is max minus min. So range is usually going to be a pretty large number because it's the largest number minus the smallest number. So that's my regular range. Inner quartile range is Q3 minus Q1. That's my inner quartile range. So if I think about that, maximum, like if I think about, I'm just going to draw a number line. We don't have actual numbers to use here, but my maximum might be somewhere way down here, and my minimum is going to be somewhere way down here. Q1 and Q3 are going to be somewhere in between. I don't know exactly where because I don't have numbers here, but I know Q1 and Q3 are going to be between the minimum and the maximum. So that means this space from Q1 to Q3 is always going to be smaller than the space from minimum to maximum. Those are always going to be larger or smaller than the Q1 and Q3. They're going to go further on the number line. So that means that the range is always going to be a larger number than the inner quartile range. The space between minimum and maximum is always going to be larger than the space between Q3 and Q1. So if my range is X and my IQR is Y, then it would make sense that X should always be larger than Y. So X should be greater than or equal to Y. Okay, and 40, Stacy did a survey of 10 customers. They rate their visit 0 to 30. She was doing a data analysis. She realized she made a mistake and that the 0-3 should have been a 30. So we want to know which one would not have been affected. So let's just think about how we would have found each of these. So the range would be the maximum minus the minimum. So if I look at the data set as it is, the maximum would have been 29 and the minimum would have been 3. So the range would definitely be affected if that would have been a 30 instead of a 3. That would have changed the maximum to 30 and the minimum to 15. So range is out. That one would definitely be changed if that had been a 30 instead. Mode is whichever one occurs the most often. So let's see. It looks like that would be 23. 23 shows up 3 times. It doesn't matter what the other numbers are. It's just there's 3 23s. So it doesn't matter if that was a 3 or a 30, it wouldn't change the mode. So right now it looks like mode is our best option. Mean would definitely be changed. Think about like a class set of test scores. If one person's grade goes in as a 0 instead of 100, that's going to bring the mean way down for that class. If it goes in as 100 instead, their mean is going to look a lot higher. So putting a 3 instead of a 30 would definitely change the mean. And then median could also be changed because they would be in a different order. Instead of having 3-way at the end, we would have a third, or a 3-way at the beginning, we'd have a 30 at the end. So everything's going to kind of shift in one direction. So what falls in the middle is going to be different because we're moving something from the beginning to the end. So the medium would not, the medium would be affected. So the only thing that would not be affected there is the mode.